Ciao, Yam. So how's everyone doing today? Good? So some of the students were complaining, Mr. Tang, your video not so funny. So then I'll try my best to make it a little bit more entertaining or a little bit funnier. But I'll try. All right. So today we're going to learn about lesson 2.7, graphing linear inequality. So linear, what does linear mean? Linear means line. Good. And inequality, inequality means like those Pac-Mans. So there's 4 inequalities we learned about. Let's review some of the inequalities. There's this, and there's these. These over here are strictly less than or greater than. So when you're graphing these, you have like a open circle in one dimension. But in 2 dimension with the x and a y, you're not drawing circles, you're drawing like lines. So these lines will actually be dotted or dash. So they're like open, they're dotted or dashed. They kind of look like this. On these are actually equal. So in 1 dimension, they're solid circle. So imagine in 2 dimension where you're drawing a line, you're going to have a solid line. So they look like a normal line. They're just a solid line like that. So the lines are solid. Sound good? So let's actually graph a line inequality or a linear inequality. Take a look. Here's our first problem. So how do you graph this? How do you graph this problem? First thing first, you graph exactly how you would graph a normal line. So in graphing a line, you have to find 2 things. First of all, you have to have it in y-intercept form. Is it in y-intercept form? Yes, so we're ready, set to go. Then you have to find 2 things to graph it. You need to find 1, slope, and 2, y-intercept. The m and the b. So let's write that down. We need to find what m equals to. We need to find what b equals to. Take a look at the positioning. M is in front of the x, so m is 1/2 in this case. B is by itself, so b is going to be 3. Now when you graph this, you always start with b, the y-intercept on the y-axis. So start at 3 on that. So count 1, 2, 3. I'll graph it in green for you. 1, 2, 3. I make a dot right there. 1, 2, 3. That's where it starts. B always tells you where to start. On the y-axis. Always on the y, not on the x. A lot of people make the mistake on the x, not on the x. On the y only. Then you graph the slope. What does the slope tell us? Remember, it's rise over run. The top tells us how much to go up and down. The bottom tells us to go left and right. So this looks like 1 up and 2 to the right. So from our first graph, we go 1 up, 2 to the right. I make my dot. So everything you have been doing has been exactly like a line. Now this is where it becomes different. Now you have to decide, is this going to be a solid line or a dashed dotted line? Take a look at the inequality. This is going to be a dashed line. So draw a dashed line here, or dotted. There you go. That's when you graph it. But hold on, we're not done. We need a shade now. So which way do we shade? You've noticed this graph is divided into 2 sections, 2 areas, the top area and then the bottom area. So which one do we shade, the top or the bottom? How can we figure out how to shade? There's 2 ways to figure out how to shade. Now I'm going to show you one way today and you're going to figure out the other way by yourself. But when you do your classwork or your homework, you're going to be doing one way only. So the first way is called a test point. And this is done a lot in chemistry, biology, all that kind of test it out to see if it works or not. So when I see this, I imagine this is like a map, right? So I used to live on Broadway and 4th Street, and this is like a map there. And actually next to there, there's called Birch Park. And I've actually been there a couple times. Have you been to Birch Park? So I'm really confused because sometimes I walk there and I see like gangsters and hoodlums hanging out there and I get a little scared, like, oh man, am I gonna get killed? And then sometimes I walk over there and I see like old ladies and old men just strolling around walking. So because it's next to a retirement home, so I'm thinking that area is kind of like where gangsters hang out and also old people. But I think gangsters hang out in a certain area and old people hang out in the other area. So how do I know which area to hang out with? Because if I hang out in the wrong area, I might get like mugged, murdered, assaulted. If I hang out in the good areas, and like the old ladies will say hi to me and I'll feel all nice. So how did I figure this out? So we do something called the test point. And this is what I normally would do. I would go call up my friend and go, hey, goes, what's up? Go, hey Steve, what you doing? Can you help me out with something? Goes, sure. And goes, what do you need me to do? I just need you to go play in the park. So Steve will go play in the park. So this is where we're picking out. We're gonna see where Steve plays. He could play anywhere over here or anywhere over here. So when you pick your test point, you could pick anywhere on the graph. I like to pick the easiest area. The easiest area for me, I think, is right here. Why? Because that area is 0, 0. And when I plug in those numbers, 0 for x, 0 for y, it's easier to multiply, add, and so on and so on. So I go, Steve, go play over there. He goes, okay. And then I'll stand in my apartment and I'll look down and see if he's okay. So I'll plug in 0 for x, 0 for y. So I got my original equation looks like this. I plug in 0 for y, less than 1/2. 0 for x, plus 3. 0 is less than 1/2 times 0, 0, 3. 0 is less than 3. Is that true or false? That's false. This is bad. What does it mean to be false? That means Steve stands in the false area. He actually in the bad area. So what happens to Steve here? This is no good. Yes, he ended up dying. I'm sad. So now I would shade the right area. Do I want to play over here? No, I want to play on the other side. So I'm going to shade the other side. This is no good. So therefore, this is your graph. You have a line and shaded on top. Very good. How do you guys feel? The camera's like up here. All right, good. So camera's on his own mind. All right, how do you guys feel so far? Let's do one more and call it a day. No way, that's the bell. All right, I'm going to try to rush through this. Take a look at this problem. Same thing, but it's all messed up. Like someone screwed this up by adding more numbers and stuff. So what am I supposed to do here? Like, oh man, someone screwed up this problem. Probably like Melissa or something. Dang it. So fix this problem. Put y by itself, everything else on the other side. Y-intercept form. Y by itself, everything else on the other side. First start by subtracting 3x both sides. I got a negative 2y less than or equal to negative 3x plus 4. Divide by negative 2 both sides. I got a y less than or equal to positive negative negative makes it positive 3/2 minus 2. Perfect. Is that correct? No, that's not correct. Why? Does anyone know why? That's right. I forgot to flip the sign. Remember, every time I divide or multiply by a negative number, I need to flip the sign. Remember the rules of inequality. Every time you multiply, divide by a negative number, you flip the sign. Find my m, find my b. My m is 3 over 2. My b is negative 2. Graph this. I start at negative 2. I go 3 up, 1, 2, 3 up, 2 to the right. I make my another dot. I graph my line, but hold on. Is this going to be a solid line or a dotted line? This is a solid line. Very good. So where do I graph? On top or bottom? I'm going to try a test point. I'm going to test once again 0, 0. Plug it in. 0 for y right here. 0 from this equation. 0 is greater or equal to 3/2 times 0 minus 2. 0 is greater or equal to negative 2. Is that true or false? This is actually a true statement. 0 is bigger than negative 2. So where am I going to shade? So this is true. That means what happened? This is right. Steve lives. We're going to shade on top where it's true. Very good. And that's how you graph linear inequality. Now I want you to think about it and think about an easier way to graph this. See if you guys can figure it out. All right, that's it, guys. Have a great day.